Welcome to Your Town. I'm Chef Wendy Brodie, Art of Food, and I'm your culinary host, and it's so exciting for me to be in this role because I get to meet such fascinating people and side careers that are not just food on the plate or wine on the table. And today we have a food stylist, Diane Gsell, and I'm so thrilled to meet you. I was telling you this morning when I was reading even more about you than skimming your wonderful career, just all the things that you've done and been a part of, and how intricate the food styling business is, or product styling, or should I say marketing. You've done it all. So I'm going to let you kind of say how you plunked into this profession through many other avenues. But welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I would say it wasn't a direct plunk. It was definitely a series of connecting dots. And
that's what I meant to say.
When I think about it, you could probably say my career in food started by getting a really lousy dorm assignment in college. And believe it or not, my dorm was so far from the dining halls that I thought, I don't want to walk back and forth 3 times a day. And so I actually started a cooking club in college with friends in my dorm. And so 4 nights a week, we would put dinner on the table for all of us. And while some friends were calling home for the meatloaf recipe, I was calling my mom for her hazelnut dacquoise recipe. Oh. And smart mom that she was, she knew not to tell me it was hard. And she knew I'd be trying to make it with, a roll of tin foil and a cookie sheet. But she knew that, why not try? So then I did plop down into San Francisco in the 90s. At a time when California cuisine was just going crazy. We had Jeremiah Tower doing his thing, and Alice Waters. Everyone was just doing amazing things with food. And if you just didn't notice it, you really weren't paying attention. So here I was, a food lover in just a really vibrant, creative city. And I was always doing things on my own time with food. And it wasn't until I learned that food styling exists that I said, okay, so this is something really cool that you can do with food. You don't have to have restaurant hours, meaning you can have a social life with non-restaurant people. And it was the kind of thing that I actively just said, this is what I'd like to pursue. And I essentially apprenticed, established food stylist to learn the trade.
What you say is so important because I was one that went to San Francisco when the Culinary Academy first opened, and all the chef instructors were European chefs used to having men in the kitchen, so women were a real novelty. And over the years being on a panel, people have always said, what is it like being a female in the field? And if you're in a restaurant, to have a family, unless you own the restaurant and can make your own hours out of it, there aren't other professions that exist that can work for women, not to be gender specific. So I'm so glad you kind of brought the restaurant hours in, because for women that want to go into the field and don't want to be necessarily behind the cooking line, this is a wonderful, creative way to express yourself.
And for men too, who, for me, I wasn't even thinking of, starting a family or anything like that. I was thinking of, here I've got this great group of friends in San Francisco, and they all work pretty much 9-to-5 jobs. if I'm ever going to see them again socially, I can't work every weekend and evenings and holidays. So I did at one point think I might give restaurant work a try, and my cover letter that I faxed for a job listing said, completely inexperienced or highly trainable, you be the judge.
Fabulous.
And I did get the job offer, but then I thought, there's got to be a different way to get into food with a life schedule like I was interested in. And I found
other talent is in writing. You have such a wonderful wit about you and analogies that you've used with your profession.
Thank you. I will come talk to you any day.
Since I have the Silver Palette Cookbook and Food for Your Life, or Foods to Live By, rather.
Correct, yes.
I was thrilled. I'm going to go back and look at
the images.
Yes,
right
yes.
on.
But,
okay.
Now that we know how you got your start, some of the behind-the-scenes tricks of the trade, there aren't enough minutes in our conversation, but if you could go over some of the challenges you had to come up with to...
So, yes. So a lot of people don't even necessarily know what a food stylist is. And the way I typically explain it is anytime anything that is a product, per se, is being photographed professionally, chances are there's a person or a team of people making that subject look its best. So if you're advertising bedding, there is someone who is ironing those sheets, putting packing tape behind every little dust ruffle, making everything just right so that the photographer can then find the best way to photograph that image. So for me, the subject just happens to be food, and it's a good fit for me because I love food. So I'm approaching food purely through the visuals, although it helps to have food knowledge to just know what might make sense. So I have to know kind of, the laws of the land. But that being said, something's done when it looks done, not when it is done. So I might take a turkey and kind of plump it up in the oven, steaming it a little bit, but paint on a mixture of dish soap and kitchen bouquet and bitters and food dye, and then I have a done-looking turkey in about an hour. So when you're with an expensive crew, time is money, and so you can tell me to get a table that looks like it's got a Thanksgiving feast on it in 2 or 3 hours, and I can do that. What other tricks do we use? There are just classic things like, okay, we're taking a photograph of a pie. Well, you've probably baked enough pies to know that pies like to collapse and shrink and get juicy, oozy, all these wonderful things that are natural but might not add to the tightest visuals. So if you told me, I want a pie that's a mile high and just, this bold silhouette, I want a slice of pie that, you have to look up to see, then I would bake that pie filled with instant mashed potatoes. I would get it as high as you want, golden brown, and then I would cut out that slice and carve out some of those mashed potatoes and basically put a veneer of your fruit filling or whatever it is. Same thing, lattice top, same thing. I'll just fill in after the fact.
Cherry.
Yep. So that's how we approach it. It's problem solving in a visual nature, and people hire me because I have years and years of expertise, and because I have a creative eye, and I have a good sense of what is needed to accomplish the visual goals of an art director and a graphic designer. So a lot of times the end result might come to me via a sketch or just layouts or thoughts, and then I have to say, okay, this is how we can pull this off. And then I work with the photographer to do that.
I was looking at your giant gingerbread man,
Yes.
which was one of them that we have a picture of right here. I mean, this was how big?
So, yeah, you can't tell how big that was. The cookie itself was probably about this large, but it was featured on a store poster that was even larger. And the reason I had to make the cookie that large was Birkenstock actually sent me some Birkenstocks, and they did check to see what my size was. They said no sense in sending you something you can't use.
Aww, how nice.
So I looked at the Birkenstocks, and I had to get in all that detail with the buckles and whatnot. And I had to show lots of different options. So I actually created out of a roofer's flashing, I think it's called, just a pliable metal. I made a temporary cookie cutter so that I could cut out these big gingerbread men, but not with the typical silhouette. They had to look like they were wearing Birkenstocks, and you can't buy a cookie cutter like that. And then the other thing that is interesting about this image is the smile. Faces can vary so greatly. They can say so many different things. And so that smile was actually dried royal icing that I had big smiles, I had flat smiles, I had smirky smiles. And once this was on set, we tried a bunch of different smiles, and the art director chose which one gave the Birkenstock personality that they wanted. So that's how we ended up.
Just like the emojis these days.
Exactly. It was, old school
We need
emoji.
a gingerbread emoji. Oh, goodness. And then a bust of Bette Midler in mock choc liver. So
Yes. Why?
describe,
Okay.
yes.
Yes. People typically ask me the strangest thing I ever had to style, and it has to be that. It was for a book that was a combination of recipes and crafts, and it was called Judaic Kitsch. And I forget the exact tie-in, but it had to be about Bette Midler. And so I indeed fashioned a 3D bust out of the mock chopped liver, which was a vegetarian, possibly vegan version. I don't know why. But when the art director saw the film, that was back in film days, she replied, "But it's grotesque." And I said, "Well, yeah."
After all your hard work,
How could it not be grotesque? And so we compromised. We reshot it, and instead I did a giant rose. So they still had the Bette Midler tie-in, but it was just a more pleasing visual. And so that's what we ended up using for the book.
Oh, I was just fascinated with that. And gosh, and one of your other things, it was clearly a great background. You have a Bachelor of Arts from Dartmouth that would allow you any direction you'd want to go, just about.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the liberal arts degree because you learn all sorts of different kinds of skills. And so, even if you're an art and philosophy major like I was, I still had to learn math. I still had to take a swimming test,
And you are partnering with the photographer, and I loved how you defined their role and their execution and how you play into that, and I'll let you define that.
Yeah, so typically
beautiful.
People hear what I do and then they say, and so then you take the pictures too. And I say, no, a photographer takes the pictures, and I explain photographers are dealing with lighting and depth of field and composition and even the post-production, maybe retouching the image, maybe, silhouetting it, getting it in a format that can then be used for whatever purpose it's being produced for. So no, the photographer does all that. The stylist deals with what is going to be photographed. Now, obviously, we go back and forth with certain things about, set composition, the props, and I try to accommodate. If I know a stylist light is always coming from one side, I make sure that the lighter color items aren't facing that light because they'll get washed out. So little things like that. So we definitely work together, but there's definitely a separation of skills and talent and simply time.
One of the things over the years having to work with myself, being in your position, I wish I had your skills. And so glad to know there's somebody local here as talented as you are, because the others I've worked with have been in San Francisco years ago. And so I've gotten to know somebody who's near and dear to you over the years, Patrick Tregenza.
Yep.
And so to have this dynamic duo, I think certainly would be an asset. But I remember back when the food photography and taking one picture would take hours, and to have your expertise is just incredible.
And something that's changed in the industry too is the aesthetics used to be a lot tighter, and so things did take longer. People wanted things to be just perfect. And now, especially with smartphones and social media and all that, styles are loosening up, and people are okay with looser, drippier, less perfect images, because a lot of them are fleeting. A lot of them are things, oh, it's on my phone, it's gone. So there's a whole genre of images from decades ago that you might look at now and say that looks surreal. That doesn't yes. resonate with me. So yes, so the time factor. I even remember the first time I was asked to style crumbs. And I was used to cleaning up the crumbs.
Yes.
Yeah,
oh,
so,
gosh.
Suddenly not only did we have to have crumbs, but they wanted them perfectly imperfect. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have a display. We're going to end up. There's so much more to your life. They're just 18 minutes is unfair. It's a sampling of you, a table of contents. So we'll end up taking a final shot of this to see just a sampling of what you've done, besides wrapped buses that went around in San Francisco with your work. Thank you again for being on, Diane. And how do we get a hold of you if we want to have your services?
It's funny, I'm a little hard to find, believe it or not. At one point I had a website, and I decided that website maintenance is no fun, and I'd rather have no site than have a dated site. So yeah, it's a little hard to find me. But typically the people who work with me might go through photographers that I work with. So certainly, if you needed to hunt me down, you could go through Patrick Tregenza, ptphoto.com.
Perfect.
And I think he'll give me a good referral. So let me walk you through these things. Why this is fun. So this is fun because I did the cookie, and the model actually wasn't holding the cookie. The model was holding a small tortilla just for placement, and then we shot the cookie in studio at an angle that we knew would fit.
Perfect.
This is fun because at one point, all the people working in Safeway delis were wearing this. And so it's always fun to see your work out and about in the world. And this is fun because this is an example of when this product was in development, I made cookies and decorated them, and they actually used the images to create the package. So this was before it even existed. And one fun thing is, at that point, it seemed like every San Francisco decorating supplier didn't have just yellow sprinkles. So yes, I had to sit and pick out yellow from the rainbow sprinkles. Yeah. Fun because it's a local company. They do great work. Fun because when is a foot-high sandwich not fun?
Yes.
And finally, this was a cake. At one point, the pan that you would use to make this cake was the #1 selling bakeware item in the Williams-Sonoma store. And I made the cake that was on their store signage, their packaging, the cover of the catalog. And my little innovation was they sold these swizzle sticks. And so I thought, well, whenever you can use more than one product, that's what they love. So I used that as the steam coming from the train.
Thank you.